Princess Valara stood on the grand balcony of the Galactic Council Hall, watching the stars shimmer through the transparent dome above. Her crystalline skin caught the light from 1,000 suns, creating rainbow patterns across her ornate robes. She was bored, terribly bored. Another reception, another gathering of species, pretending to care about galactic unity, while secretly plotting for advantage. The Veltari had ruled the stars for 10,000 years. Her people had built wonders that other species still could not understand. They had mastered technologies that seemed like magic to younger races. And now she had to smile politely at primitives who had barely left their home systems. The humans were the worst. They had joined the Galactic Council only 3 centuries ago, yet they acted as if they belonged among the ancient powers. They walked around in their plain uniforms, carrying datapads instead of neural implants, speaking in their simple language instead of telepathy. They were unremarkable in every way, except for their irritating persistence. Valara sipped her drink and surveyed the crowd. Diplomats from the Kreth Dominion stood in one corner, their forearms gesturing dramatically as they discussed trade routes. The Threshold colonies had sent their best negotiators floating in their environmental suits filled with methane gas. Even the Reaper fleet. Commanders had attended, though they kept to the shadows as was their custom. Then she saw him. A human stood alone near the viewing port, staring out at the stars. He wore a military uniform, but it looked old and worn, as if he had been wearing it for decades. His face was unremarkable, brown hair graying at the temple's eyes, that seemed tired, a posture that suggested he would rather be anywhere else. Valara felt a spark of mischief. She was a princess of the oldest empire in the galaxy. She could do whatever she wanted. And right now, she wanted to embarrass this unremarkable human who dared to look bored at her. Reception. She glided across the floor, her attendants following at a respectful distance. Other delegates moved aside automatically, giving the princess space. The human did not notice her approach. He continued staring at the stars, as if they held answers to questions he had not asked. "You seem distant from the festivities," Valara said, her voice carrying the musical quality of her people. The human turned slowly. Up close, she could see his eyes were gray, and they held a depth that surprised her. He looked at her without the usual awe that other species showed when meeting Veltari royalty. "Princess Valara," he said with a slight nod. "I apologize. Large gatherings are not my strength." "And what is your strength?" she asked, amused by his directness. "Following orders, ma'am." "How boring." Valara laughed. "Tell me, human, what do you know of Veltari marriage customs?" The question was designed to embarrass him. Veltari marriages were complex rituals that took years to arrange, involving compatibility tests, genetic analysis, and approval from dozens of family councils. No outsider could possibly understand them. "Very little," he admitted. "I know they are considered sacred, and that partnerships are chosen with great care." "Indeed." Valara's smile widened. "But hypothetically, if a common soldier wished to marry a princess, what would he need to accomplish?" She expected him to stammer or retreat. Instead, he looked at her with those gray eyes and spoke calmly. "I suppose he would need to prove himself worthy, perhaps by accomplishing 3 impossible tasks." Aleda nearly laughed out loud. He was playing along. How amusing. "3 impossible tasks," she repeated. "Very well, human. Name 3 things you believe are impossible." She expected him to say something foolish. Instead, he answered immediately, as if he had been thinking about this question for a long time. "Unite a fractured empire," he said. "Defeat an enemy without firing a shot. Sacrifice everything for people you have never met." The answer surprised her. It was thoughtful, almost philosophical. But she had already committed to her joke. "Interesting choices," she said loudly enough for nearby delegates to hear. "Very well, human soldier. Since you have named 3 impossible feats, I accept your proposal of marriage." The crowd around them went silent. Several delegates turned to stare. Valara could feel their shock and confusion. A Veltari princess accepting a marriage proposal from a human? It was absurd. It was scandalous. It was perfect. She waited for the human to panic or apologize or do something that would make her victory complete. Instead, he simply nodded once. "Understood," he said. "Thank you for considering it." Then he walked away, leaving Valara standing on the balcony with her mouth open. Around her, the whispers began spreading through the crowd like fire. She had expected him to beg or deny or make a scene. She had not expected simple acceptance. "Your Highness," her attendant, Lady Shira, appeared at her elbow. "What have you done?" "Made a joke," Valara said, though her confidence was fading. "That human needed to be put in his place, Your Highness." Shira's voice was urgent. "Did you see his name badge?" "I did not care about his name." Shira pulled out her datapad, her fingers moving quickly across the screen. "Marcus Webb, human delegate, former military." "So, all human delegates are former military. That species cannot stop fighting long enough to build a proper civilization." Shira's face had gone pale, which was difficult for a Veltari, whose skin was naturally luminescent. "Your Highness, this Marcus Webb appears in 17 different galactic databases." "What?" Shira turned the datapad so Valara could see. The screen showed file after file, each from a different organization or government. The Kreth Dominion had listed him as a war criminal. The Threshold colonies called him a savior. The Reaper Fleet database simply labeled him as Ghost, with a note that he should be considered extremely dangerous. But it was the last file that made Valara's blood run cold. The Vorgash Empire, a species that had been extinct for 20 years, had left behind archives. In those archives, Marcus Webb had a single designation: the ending. Valara grabbed the datapad and started reading. With each file, her hands trembled more. This was not a common soldier. This was not even an uncommon soldier. This was something else entirely. Marcus Webb had fought in the siege of Vardanus, holding a colony of 6,000 civilians against an army of 60,000 for 3 months. He had ended the silent war of Praxis by infiltrating a fascist government and bringing it down from within without killing a single civilian. He had sacrificed himself at Hellion's Gate, piloting a damaged ship into a black hole. Generator saving 8 billion lives. The 3 impossible tasks he had named. He had already done them all. "Stars," Valara whispered. "What have I done?" Across the hall, Marcus Webb stood alone again, staring at the stars, unaware that the princess was learning the truth about the legend she had just accidentally accepted as her husband. Part 2. Shadows of 1,000 Battles. Vela could not sleep. She lay in her quarters aboard the council station, staring at the ceiling while her mind raced. The datapad on her nightstand glowed softly, displaying the files about Marcus Webb that she had been reading for hours. She had made a terrible mistake. She had mocked a man who had shaped the history of the galaxy. She had treated a legend like a common fool. And worst of all, she had done it in front of hundreds of witnesses, who would spread the story across 1,000 worlds. But more than embarrassment, Valara felt something else: curiosity. Who was this human who had accomplished impossible things yet dressed like a simple soldier? Why had he accepted her joke proposal without protest? What kind of person walked away from glory to serve as a lowly delegate? As dawn broke over the artificial horizon of the station, Valara made a decision. She would investigate Marcus's Webb properly. Not through databases and official files, but through the people who had actually met him. Her first stop was the Veterans Hall, a place where retired soldiers from various species gathered to share stories and drink. It was not a place where princesses usually went, but Valara wore a simple cloak that hid her crystalline features and walked in with Lady Shira at her side. The hall was loud and crowded. Kreth warriors arm wrestled in one corner. Threshold veterans shared memories through their neural links. Human soldiers played cards at a worn table. And in the center of it all, sitting alone at the bar, was an old, scarred figure that Valara recognized as Krellanax, a legendary Kreth general who had fought in 30 campaigns. Valara approached carefully. Krellanax had lost 3 of his 4 arms in battle, and his face was covered in scars that told stories of violence. He was drinking something that smelled toxic and staring at nothing. General Valara said quietly, "May I ask you something?" Krellanax turned his one good eye toward her. Recognition flashed across his face, but he said nothing about her identity. Veterans had their own code of honor, he rumbled.
Act.
Do you know Marcus Webb? The effect was immediate. Krellenak straightened in his seat. Around them, other veterans went quiet. Even the humans at the card table stopped playing and turned to listen. Everyone here knows the Ashwalker, Krellenak said. Why do you ask? I need to understand who he is. Krellenak studied her for a long moment. Then he gestured to the empty seat beside him. Valara sat down, and Shira stood guard behind her. 30 years ago, Krellenak began, I was a company commander in the Kreth Dominion Army. We were fighting the humans over a border dispute in the Vardana sector. My unit ambushed a human patrol. We thought we had one. Then everything went wrong. He took a long drink before continuing. Human reinforcements arrived. My soldiers panicked and scattered. I was wounded badly, bleeding from all 4 arms. I should have died on that battlefield. Instead, a human soldier found me. Marcus Webb, Valara said. The Ashwalker, Krellenak corrected. That is what we called him because he walked through fire and destruction like it was nothing. He picked me up even though I weighed twice what he did. He carried me 17 miles through hostile territory while my own soldiers hunted him. He could have left me to die. Our people were enemies. But he carried me anyway. Why? Valara asked. I asked him that later after the war ended. He said that leaving someone to die when you could save them was the same as killing them yourself. He said he had seen too much death to add to it unnecessarily. Krellenak finished his drink and gestured to the bartender for another. The Ashwalker saved 43 enemy soldiers during that war. 43 warriors from different species who all tried to kill him at one point. Every one of us lived because he decided our lives mattered more than the war. A human veteran walked over to their table. She was missing an eye and walked with a mechanical leg. You were talking about Marcus, she said. It was not a question. Yes, Valara said. He trained me, the woman said. I was young, stupid, thought I was invincible. Marcus taught me that courage was not about being unafraid. It was about being terrified and doing the right thing anyway. He taught me that every shot I fired, every decision I made would follow me for the rest of my life. He made me promise to value every life, even enemy lives. More veterans gathered around. A threshold warrior shared a memory through a neural link showing Marcus negotiating peace with the Vex hive mind. Sitting alone in a room with a creature that could have killed him instantly, but choosing words over weapons. A Reaper fleet scout told of how Marcus had found their lost colony ship, and instead of reporting its location to his superiors, he had quietly supplied it with food and fuel until they could repair their engines. Each story revealed another piece of the puzzle. Marcus Webb was not just a soldier. He was not just a hero. He was something unique, a human who had fought 1,000 battles and emerged with his humanity intact. Where is he now? Valara asked finally. He is always alone, a veteran said. The Ashwalker does not seek company. He carries too many ghosts. Valara left the veterans' hall with her mind full of new questions. She found Marcus 3 hours later in an observation deck, staring at the stars just as he had been the night before. For a moment, she considered leaving him alone. But she had started this, and she needed to finish it. Marcus Webb, she said as she approached. He turned slowly. Princess Valara, how can I help you? You can explain why you accepted my proposal. Marcus looked at her for a long moment. Then he turned back to the stars. Because I thought you were serious. What? The 3 impossible tasks you asked about? Unite a fractured empire, defeat an enemy without firing a shot, sacrifice everything for those you have never met. I have done all 3 of those things. Valara felt her breath catch. The human colonial sphere. You united them after the fracture wars. I helped, Marcus said quietly. Many people worked to heal those divisions. I just did my part. The Vex hive mind. You negotiated peace with them. The Vex were not evil. They were scared and alone. I showed them another way. Halion's Gate. You sacrificed yourself to save billions. I survived, Marcus said. So it was not really a sacrifice. Just a calculated risk that happened to work out. Valara wanted to scream. He spoke about legendary achievements, as if they were simple tasks anyone could have done. Did he not understand how incredible he was? "Why are you here?" she asked. "You could be an admiral, a general, a leader of your people. Why serve as a simple delegate?" Marcus finally looked at her. His gray eyes held depths of sorrow that made her want to look away. "Because I am tired," he said simply. "I have fought enough wars. I have given enough orders that got good people killed. I have carried enough bodies off enough battlefields. Now I just want to help build peace in whatever small way I can. And if that means sitting through boring receptions and filing reports, then that is what I will do." "And my proposal?" Valara asked. "Did you really think I was serious?" "I hoped you might be," Marcus said. "For a moment I thought maybe someone saw past the legend to the man. Someone who might understand that behind all those stories is just a tired soldier who wants to be valued for who he is, not what he has done." He turned back to the stars. "But I understand now. It was a joke. I should have realized no one like you would want someone like me." Valara stood frozen as Marcus walked away for the second time. But this time she understood. She had not wounded his pride. She had wounded something deeper. She had offered hope and then taken it away. And somehow, in the span of 2 days, Princess Valara had started to care about a man. Part 3. When legends walk among us, the emergency session of the Galactic Council was chaos. Delegates shouted over each other in a dozen different languages, while translators struggled to keep up. Display screens showed the same terrifying images, fleet after fleet of organic ships emerging from dark space, consuming everything in their path. The Carathene swarm had. Returned Valara sat in her designated NAD seat, watching the panic spread through the chamber. The swarm was a nightmare from ancient history, a hive-mind species that had nearly destroyed the galaxy. 2,000 years ago, before disappearing into the void between stars. Now they were back, and they were hungry. "We must evacuate the frontier worlds," the Kreth ambassador declared. "Pull back our forces, establish a defensive line." "That means abandoning 12 billion civilians," a human delegate countered. "We cannot just leave them to die." "Better 12 billion than 12 trillion, a threshold representative argued. "The swarm cannot be stopped. History has proven this." The debate continued, but Valara was not listening. She was watching Marcus Webb. He sat in the back row of the human delegation section, silent and still, while everyone around him shouted. His eyes were focused on the tactical displays, studying the swarm's movement patterns. 3 days had passed since their last conversation, 3 days during which Valara had found herself thinking about him constantly. She had reviewed more files, read more reports, talked to more veterans. Each piece of information made her respect him more and regret her joke proposal even deeper. Now the galaxy faced extinction, and the only person who seemed calm was the tired soldier she had. Mocked Marcus stood up. The movement was not dramatic, but somehow every eye in the chamber turned toward him. The shouting died down. Even the most arrogant delegates went quiet when the Ashwalker rose to speak. He walked to the central platform with steady steps. When he reached the speaker's podium, he did not hesitate or show any sign of nervousness. He simply began to talk. "The Carathene swarm operates on a simple principle," Marcus said. "Consume, absorb, expand. They see other species as resources, not as people. But they are not mindless. They are intelligent, more intelligent than most of us want to admit." "What are you suggesting?" the council chairman asked. "I am suggesting we talk to them." The chamber erupted in protests. Talk to the swarm. It was impossible. It was suicide. It was insane. Marcus waited for the noise to die down, then continued. 2,000 years ago, the swarm attacked because they were starving. Their home dimension was collapsing, and they needed resources to survive. We fought them back, but we never solved the underlying problem. Now, they have returned because they are starving again. "How do you know this?" a delegate demanded. "Because I have studied every first contact scenario in galactic history. The swarm follows patterns just like every other species. And those patterns tell me they can be reasoned with if we approach them correctly." The Kreth ambassador slammed his fist on his desk. "You want us to bet the survival of the galaxy on your theory?" "No," Marcus said calmly. "I want you to bet it on my experience." I have negotiated with species that everyone said could not be negotiated with. I have found common ground where others saw only conflict. And I am telling you that the swarm can be reached if someone is willing to try. And who would be foolish enough to attempt such a mission? The chairman asked. I will go, Marcus said. Give me a small team and a fast ship. We will infiltrate the swarm's neural cluster and attempt to establish communication. If we succeed, we save billions of lives. If we fail, then you lose one old soldier, and nothing changes. Valara found herself standing before she realized what she was doing. I volunteer to join the mission. The chamber went silent. A Veltari princess volunteering for a suicide mission. It was unheard of. Marcus looked at her with those gray eyes. Your Highness, this is not your fight. Yes, it is, Valara said, surprising herself with her own conviction. You spoke of sacrifice and courage. My people built this galaxy's oldest civilization, but what have we sacrificed lately? What courage have we shown? I will not let humanity face this threat alone. The chairman looked between them, clearly uncertain. Then other delegates began to stand. A Kreth warrior volunteered. A threshold scientist, a Reaper fleet commander. Within minutes, 7 volunteers had come forward, each one a veteran or expert in their field. Very well, the chairman said finally. You have your team, Marcus Webb. May the stars guide you. The mission preparation took 3 days. Valara trained alongside Marcus, learning how to move in combat situations, how to use weapons, how to think like a soldier. She had spent her life in palaces and gardens. Now she crawled through simulation chambers and practiced emergency procedures until her muscles ached. Marcus was a patient teacher. He showed her how to conserve her energy in a crisis, how to read tactical situations, how to stay calm when everything went wrong. But more than that, he treated her as an equal, not as a princess, not as a liability, but as a teammate whose contributions mattered. On their last night before departure, Valara found Marcus in the ship's galley. He was drinking coffee and staring at a datapad displaying photos of people she did not recognize. Who are they? She asked. Marcus looked up startled. Friends, soldiers I served with. Most of them are gone now. I am sorry. Do not be, Marcus said. They died doing what they believed was right. That is the best any of us can hope for. Valara sat down across from him. Why do you keep fighting? After everything you have seen, everything you have lost, why do you keep volunteering for impossible missions? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he set down his coffee and looked at her with an honesty that took her breath away. Because if I stopped, then all those deaths meant nothing, he said. Every friend I lost, every civilian I could not save, every enemy I had to kill, they all become meaningless unless I keep trying to build something better. I fight because I owe it to the people who cannot fight anymore. That is a heavy burden, Valara said softly. 'Tis, Marcus agreed. But I have carried heavy things before. Recently I found a reason to keep carrying them. What reason? Marcus smiled slightly. A princess who had the courage to volunteer for a suicide mission, even though she had spent her whole life in safety. Someone who could have stayed in her palace, but chose to stand with strangers against impossible odds. That kind of bravery reminds me why I fight. Valara felt warmth spread through her chest. Marcus, about my proposal. You do not need to explain, he said quickly. I understand it was a joke. Not what I was going to say, Valara interrupted. I was going to say that I have been a fool. I judged you without knowing you. I mocked you without understanding you. I have spent these 3 days realizing that you are exactly the kind of person I hoped existed but never thought I would meet. Marcus stared at her. Your Highness. Valara, she corrected. Just Valara. And I want you to know that when we survive this mission, because I believe we will survive, I would like to discuss that proposal seriously, not as a joke, not as a game, but as 2 people who might have found something worth exploring. For the first time since she met him, Marcus Webb smiled a real genuine smile that transformed his tired face into something lighter. I would like that, Valara, he said. Would like that very much. The next morning they boarded the ship and headed toward the swarm. 7 warriors from different species, united by a common goal to save the galaxy or die trying. And among them, a princess and a soldier who had found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances, were beginning to understand that sometimes the greatest battles are fought not with weapons, but with the courage to be vulnerable with another person. The mission was about to begin. Part 4. Into the swarm, the ship shuddered as it dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Through the viewports, Valara could see the swarm's territory, a region of space that looked wrong. Stars were dimmed or missing, entirely consumed by the organic ships that filled every visible space. The vessels were not built, they were grown massive creatures of chitin and flesh that pulsed with unnatural life. 30 seconds to detection, their pilot announced. He was a Reaper Fleet veteran named Corvan who had volunteered because he owed Marcus's life from some past mission. Everyone ready? Valara checked her equipment for the 10th time. She wore lightweight armor, designed for mobility rather than protection. Her weapon was a Veltari crystal blade that could cut through almost anything. And attached to her suit was a translation device that Marcus had modified to potentially communicate with the swarm's neural patterns. Marcus moved through the cabin, checking on each team member. He adjusted the Kreth warrior's ammunition load, showed the threshold. Scientists how to properly seal her environment suit, and made sure everyone knew their roles. He was calm, focused, completely in his element. When he reached Valara, he paused. "How are you feeling?" "Terrified," she admitted, "but ready?" "Good," Marcus said. "Fear keeps you sharp. Just remember your training and stay close to the team." The ship suddenly lurched as swarm vessels detected their presence. Alarms blared and emergency lights bathed everything in red. "They are sending interceptors," Corvan shouted. "Brace for evasive maneuvers." The next few minutes were chaos. Ship twisted and turned through space, while organic projectiles exploded around them. Corvan was an expert pilot, but even he struggled against the sheer number of swarm vessels. They were like immune cells attacking an infection, overwhelming through numbers rather than skill. "I am taking us in," Corvan announced. "Everyone get to the drop pods." The team scrambled to the deployment bay. 7 pods barely large enough for one person each. They would be fired directly into the heart of the swarm's neural cluster, a massive organic structure that served as the hive mind's brain. 60 seconds, Marcus said over the comm. "Remember the plan. We land, find the neural core, and establish communication. If anyone gets separated, make your way to the rally point. If anyone gets injured, the mission continues. We cannot afford to stop." Valara climbed into her pod. The space was cramped and dark. Through the small viewport, she could see Marcus entering the pod next to hers. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and he nodded once, a gesture of confidence and trust. Then the pods launched, falling through space. Inside a metal coffin, while alien vessels tried to destroy you, was not something Valara had ever imagined experiencing. The pod shook violently as swarm defenses fired at them. She heard explosions, saw flashes of light, and prayed to ancestors she had never believed in. The impact was brutal. Her pod smashed through layers of organic tissue and crashed into something solid. Alarms screamed, the viewport cracked, then the pod's explosive bolts fired, and the door blew open. Valara stumbled out into nightmare. The interior of the swarm structure was like being inside a living creature. Walls of flesh pulsed with rhythmic breathing. Veins, the size of tunnels, pumped glowing fluid. And everywhere there were drones, organic creatures that served as the swarm's hands and eyes. "Team status," Marcus's voice crackled over the comm. "Pod 3 down," someone reported. "Corvan did not make it." "Pod 6 damaged," another voice said. "I am injured but mobile." Valara activated her own comm. "Pod 4 operational. I am moving to Rally Point Alpha." She ran through the organic corridors, following the map Marcus had burned into her memory. Behind her, she could hear drones screeching as they detected her presence. She did not look back. Looking back would slow her down, and she needed speed. The rally point was a chamber where several tunnels converged. Marcus was already there, along with 3 other team members. 2 were missing. 2 dead. "We keep moving," Marcus said. There was grief in his eyes, but his voice was steady. "They died getting us this far. We honor them by finishing the mission." The team pushed deeper into the structure. They fought drones, with weapons and tools, moving as a unit the way Marcus had taught them. The Kreth warrior provided heavy firepower. The threshold scientist analyzed the swarm's biological patterns, looking for weaknesses, and Valara found herself moving with a confidence she had not known she possessed. She was not helpless. She was not a burden. She was a warrior fighting alongside legends and holding her own. They reached the neural core after an hour of fighting. It was a vast chamber filled with a structure that defied description. Billions of neural connections pulsed with electrical activity. The consciousness of absorbed civilizations flickered within the organic computer, creating patterns of thought too complex for individual minds to comprehend. And waiting for them was the Swarm Queen. She was not a physical being. She was a presence, a manifestation of the hive mind given form. She appeared as a shifting mass of bodies and faces, people from 1,000 species, all absorbed into the collective. When she spoke, her voice came from everywhere and nowhere. "I know you, Marcus Webb," the Queen said. "I carry the memories of the Vorgash Empire. They called you the Ending because you ended their civilization when they tried to destroy a peaceful species. You are capable of terrible things." Marcus stepped forward. "I am also capable of building peace. That is why I am here." "You come with weapons into my home," the Queen said. "You kill my drones, and you expect me to listen to your words?" "I come because your home is dying," Marcus replied. "Your dimensional space is collapsing. You returned to our dimension because you were starving. But consuming civilizations is not the answer. It only creates more conflict, more war, more death. There's another way." "What way?" Queen's voice carried suspicion and curiosity. "Partnership," Marcus said. "The Galactic Council controls resources that could sustain your people without destroying ours. We can share technology, food, energy. We can help you stabilize your dimensional space. But only if you stop consuming and start cooperating." "Why would you help us?" the Queen asked. "We are your enemies." "You were only enemies because we never tried to understand you," Marcus said. 2,000 years ago, when you first came to our dimension, we reacted with fear. We attacked instead of asking why you were here. That was our mistake. I will not repeat it." The Queen was silent for a long moment. Valara could feel the hive mind thinking, processing, considering. Then she spoke again. "You speak beautiful words, Marcus Webb, but words are empty without commitment. How do I know your council will honor any agreement? How do I trust a species that tried to exterminate mine?" Marcus took a deep breath. "Because I will stay here as a guarantee. Connect me to your neural network. Make me part of the hive mind. I will be your bridge to the council, your proof that humanity is serious about peace. If we betray you, then you have me as a hostage." "No," Valara said, stepping forward. "If Marcus stays, then I stay too. You want commitment? Then take a princess of the oldest empire in the galaxy. Take someone whose life matters to millions. Show the council that we are serious about building something new." Marcus turned to her. "Valara, you do not have to do this." "Yes, I do," she said. "You taught me that courage means doing what is right even when you are terrified." "I am terrified, Marcus. But I am also certain that this is right." The Queen studied them both. A human soldier willing to sacrifice himself. A Veltari princess willing to share his fate. This is unexpected. This is interesting. "Then you agree?" Marcus asked. "Agree to try," the Queen said. "But understand this, integration is not temporary. You will become part of me forever. You will experience the thoughts and memories of billions. You will lose some of your individual identity. And if your council betrays this trust, you will suffer alongside my people." "We understand," Marcus and Valara said together. The Queen's form shifted, becoming tendrils of organic matter that reached toward them. Valara felt fear spike through her system, but she did not step back. She looked at Marcus and saw the same determination in his eyes. They held hands as the swarm took them. Part 5. The Princess and the Legend Pain was the first sensation. Valara felt her consciousness being pulled apart and reconstructed as tendrils of organic matter connected to her neural pathways. It was like drowning in thoughts that were not her own memories from a billion lives flooding into her mind all at once. She was a Vorgash soldier, dying on a battlefield. Cursing the human called the Ending, she was a threshold colonist watching her. Children get consumed by the swarm. She was a Kreth. warrior being carried to safety by an enemy who should have let her die. She was Marcus. Webb holding the body of his best friend and knowing it was his order that got her killed. The memories crashed over her, threatening to sweep away everything that made her Valara. She felt herself dissolving, becoming just another voice in the infinite chorus of the hive mind. Then something grabbed her consciousness and held tight. Marcus. Even in this sea of alien thoughts, she recognized him. His presence was steady, like an anchor in a storm. He had been here before, not physically but mentally. He had experienced loss and trauma and grief so profound it would have destroyed lesser beings. And he had learned to carry it without breaking. He showed her how. Not through words, because words did not exist in this space, but through pure understanding. He taught her to accept the flood of memories without resisting, to find the core of herself that could not be washed away. To hold on to her identity while acknowledging that she was now part of something larger. Slowly, Valara found her balance. She was still herself, but she was also more. She could feel the Swarm Queen's ancient intelligence, the desperate hunger of the drones, the collective fear of a species facing extinction. And beneath it all, she felt something she had not expected: loneliness. The swarm had absorbed billions of beings, but it had never truly connected with another species. Every interaction had been predator and prey, consumer and consumed. They had never known partnership or cooperation or friendship. They had been alone for thousands of years, convinced that isolation was the only way to survive. Valara opened her awareness to Marcus and realized he had seen this too. That was why he had offered himself as a bridge. He understood what it meant to be surrounded by people, yet fundamentally alone. "Show me," the Swarm Queen's voice echoed through the neural space. "Show me what you have seen." Marcus did not hesitate. He opened his memories completely, letting the Queen experience his life. She saw every battle he had fought, every person he had saved, every friend he had lost. She experienced his guilt over the Vorgash Empire, watching him destroy a civilization to save another. She felt his exhaustion after decades of war and his desperate hope that maybe somewhere, somehow, he could help build peace. Valara followed his example. She showed the Queen her life of privilege in crystal palaces, her boredom with ceremonies and expectations, her joke proposal and the shame she felt when she learned who Marcus truly was. And finally, her decision to volunteer for this mission, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Become someone worthy of standing beside a legend. The Queen absorbed their memories, processed their experiences. Then she shared her own story. The swarm had evolved in a dimension where resources were scarce and life was brutal. Cooperation had been impossible because every species competed for survival. The hive mind had formed not as a choice but as a necessity, a way to consolidate strength and eliminate competition. When their dimension began collapsing, they had come to this reality and done the only thing they knew how to do: consume and survive. But survival without purpose was just existence. And existence without connection was torture. "I want to believe you," the Queen said, "but I have been alone for so long. How do I trust?" "You start small," Marcus replied. "One agreement. One exchange of resources. One moment of cooperation. Then another. Then another. Trust is not built instantly. It is built through consistent actions over time. And if your people betray me, then you have us," Valara said. "We will spend eternity in your neural network. We will experience your suffering as our own. We will be your proof that betrayal has consequences." The Queen considered this. In the neural space, time moved differently. Seconds could feel like hours or hours like seconds. Finally, she reached a decision. "I agree to your proposal," the Queen said. "But you will remain connected to me. Not as prisoners, but as ambassadors. You will be my voice to your council and their voice to me. You will live in both worlds. Can you accept this?" "Yes," Marcus and Valara said together. The integration process completed. Valara felt her consciousness settle into a new normal. She was still herself, but she was also part of the swarm. She could feel the thoughts of drones, sense the movement of ships, understand the hive mind's needs and desires. And beside her always was Marcus, steady and strong, a companion in this strange, new existence. They emerged from the neural core hours later. The surviving team members were waiting, weapons ready, expecting the worst. When they saw Marcus and Valara walking out alive but changed, they did not know how to react. "The swarm agrees to negotiate," Marcus said. His voice carried harmonics that had not been there before, echoes of the hive mind within him. "We need to contact the Council immediately." The next 6 months were a blur of activity. The Galactic Council was shocked, horrified, and finally accepting of the new situation. Marcus and Valara served as intermediaries, translating between the swarm's alien consciousness and the Council's political structures. Resources were allocated. Technology was shared. Slowly, carefully, a partnership formed. The swarm stopped consuming worlds. Instead, they began working with Council scientists to stabilize their dimensional space. In exchange, they offered biological technologies that revolutionized medicine, agriculture, and environmental restoration. What had been humanity's greatest threat became its most valuable ally. But the real change happened in the quiet moments. Valara would find Marcus in their shared quarters aboard the diplomatic station, staring at the stars the way he always had. But now when she asked what he was thinking, he could show her directly through the neural connection they shared. His thoughts, his fears, his hopes, his memories, all of it open to her understanding. And she shared herself with him equally. Her insecurities about never being good enough, her anger at a life of expectations and duties, her growing love for a man who had shown her what real courage looked like. 6 months after the integration, the Galactic Council held a ceremony honoring those who had made the peace possible. Marcus and Valara were invited as guests of honor. They walked into the council hall hand in hand, and Valara was struck by how different it looked from the first time she had been here. Then she had been a bored princess looking for amusement. Now she was a bridge between worlds, someone who had sacrificed her old life to build something better. After the ceremony, a small group gathered for a more private celebration. Veterans from a dozen species came to congratulate them. The Swarm Queen sent a drone to represent her consciousness, a gesture of respect and friendship. And in the middle of it all, Marcus pulled Valara aside. "I have something to ask you," he said. "I know what you are going to ask," Valara replied, smiling. Their neural connection made hiding intentions difficult. "And yes, you should let me ask properly," Marcus said. He knelt down in the human tradition and looked up at her with those gray eyes that she had come to love. "Valara of the Veltari, will you marry me? Not as a joke, not as a political arrangement, but because I love you and I want to spend whatever time we have left together." "Yes," Valara said. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." The wedding took place 3 weeks later. It was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. A Veltari princess marrying a human soldier. Traditional ceremonies from both cultures blended together. And most remarkably, a representative of the swarm. Attended, physically present at a gathering of those they had once tried to consume. When Marcus and Valara exchanged vows, they did so knowing that their minds were already joined, that they had already experienced the deepest possible intimacy. But saying the words publicly, making the commitment formal, that mattered. It was a declaration to the galaxy that love could bridge any divide, that understanding could overcome any difference. During the reception, the Kreth General Krellanax approached them. "I told you once that the Ashwalker saved my life," he said to Valara. "Now I understand he did more than that. He showed me that even enemies can become family. Thank you both for continuing to prove that." As the celebration continued, Valara found a quiet moment to stand with Marcus on a balcony overlooking the stars. The same spot where she had made her joke proposal so many months ago. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Giving up your humanity to become part of the swarm?" "I did not give up my humanity," Marcus said. "I expanded it. And no, I do not regret it. Especially because I got to experience it with you." Valara leaned against him, feeling the warmth of his presence, both physical and mental. "I spent my whole life thinking I knew what I wanted: status, respect, power. But it turns out what I needed was someone who could see past all of that. Someone who valued me for who I am. not what I represent." "I could say the same," Marcus replied. "I spent decades being the legend, the hero, the symbol. You were the first person to look at me and see just a tired soldier who needed rest. And somehow you decided that soldier was worth loving." They stood together watching the stars while the celebration continued behind them. Two people from different worlds who had found each other through the most unlikely circumstances. A joke proposal that became the foundation for the greatest partnership the galaxy had ever seen. And in the neural space, they shared the Swarm Queen observed and learned. She saw how Marcus and Valara supported each other, balanced each other, made each other stronger. And for the first time in thousands of years, the ancient hive mind understood what it truly meant to not be alone. The galaxy had been saved not by weapons or superior technology, but by two people who chose to build a bridge where others saw only a divide. And their love story would be told across 1,000 worlds as proof that even in the darkness of space, the light of connection could never be extinguished.